Welcome back to Low Carbon Lifestyle. This is the third video in my series about cars. And in this video I'm going to show you an experience of hiring an electric vehicle from a hire place near us called EVrent. EVrent happens to be about a 20-minute bike ride from my house and is the only place that you can do short-term EV hire that I'm aware of. This video is half telling the story of that day and half me filling in the gaps to explain what we learnt and what we learned about electric vehicles. I hope it's useful.
Something really exciting is happening today. Esther and I are taking a day off and we're going to drive some of the Northumberland 250, which is a 250-mile route around some of the more beautiful parts of the county of Northumberland. We're so excited, it's going to be great. The route we're going to do today is about 200 miles, so we're not doing the whole route, and it's a bit of a trek to get there from Durham anyway, so we're doing about 200 miles. If we did that in our car, it would emit about 40 kilograms of CO2. And here's the second exciting bit. We're not going to do it in our car. I'm on my way to Diggerland in Langley Park, and we're going to hire an electric vehicle for the day. Cannot wait.
My name is Tom and this is a little series about a low carbon lifestyle.
So we're going to stop at a 50 kilowatt charger in Alnwick. That'll be after about 60 miles of driving, and that should do us for the day, I think. Very exciting.
So EVrent, or I've seen it called EVision I think as well, is a hire company that purely hires out electric vehicles from anywhere between a day and 3 years. I'd actually seen them profiled on Robert Llewelyn's Fully Charged show, and after I looked into them a little bit I realised that as of 2021 they only have 4 sites. 3 of them happen to be adjacent to Diggerland, which is a digger-based theme park that me and some friends went to in 2011, where you get to play on diggers and it's brilliant. If you've not been, I would highly recommend it. But anyway, fortunately for us there is a Diggerland not too far from where we live. So I got in touch. I tried to hire a Renault Zoe for the weekend. They didn't have any available in Durham, but they did have a BMW i3. So for £40 a day, we hired a BMW electric car. What a treat. I'd never driven a Beamer before. This was my first time and it was purely electric.
Okay, here we go. The BMW i3. It's a nice little car.
So maybe I should tell you something about the i3. The i3 is one of the older electric vehicles you could get, and it looks fairly different to other cars on the road. It really stands out as an EV. But depending on how you look at it, I think it's a pretty cool car. The one we hired was the 120 amp hour vehicle, which has a range of about 180-190 miles on one charge. One thing that you notice in the i3, as soon as you get in, is how quickly it can accelerate. I don't actually have any footage of that, but this was seriously the quickest car I've ever driven, and let me tell you, I had to say I beat the S cool back in 2008. Quick. So our plan was to drive about 250 miles in a day. So I knew we would have to charge at some point. I opened up ZapMap and I looked at the Northumberland 250 route and I spotted a rapid 50 kilowatt charger just off the route in Alnwick. So off we went. We started our adventure. The Northumberland 250 route is really beautiful. We started by driving up to Corbridge and then through Otterburn, up to Rothbury, and then finally up to Alnwick.
Okay, so here we are at Charger.
We stopped at a Osprey charger for what was my first experience of charging an electric vehicle in the public. It was dead easy. Contactless payment, off we go.
Real. Okay, so we're in Alnwick, we've arrived. I've just plugged the car in. I think we drove about 85 miles to get here. and we have about 80 odd miles left of range. So it's going to charge up now. It says by 1:39 it'll have 170 miles, which is just under an hour. We shall see. I'm going to leave it charging and go get a coffee and some lunch. It actually charged much quicker than what it said it would, and we were done in about half an hour. So coffee's drunk, food eaten, two happy little troopers. Okay, so we stopped for half an hour. We got something like 21 kilowatt hours worth of electricity for £7, but that's given us 100 miles more range than what we had when we got here. So it says we've now got 177 miles, and that should hopefully do us for the whole day. But we'll see. We will see. I don't think we need to stop again.
Please leave the roundabout.
Some kind of commentator's curse here, Tom, isn't it? Famous last words. After stopping for lunch in Alnwick, we headed back towards Rothbury, down to Otterburn, over to Kielder, and then back south through Bellingham, eventually finding our way to Blanchland.
So for a different video, I would really recommend the Northumberland 250 route. It really is amazing. You see the hills, the forests, the castles, the waterfalls, the views, all of it are one of the best kept secrets in the UK, Northumberland. We can't wait to go back and drive the full route with some better weather one day. Maybe even go on our bikes and take our time with it. One thing to note about driving an EV is that on a hilly route, an electric vehicle might not be as efficient as just driving around town as a normal driving day. So for us, very conscious of the hills, we decided to head home from Blanchland, which is a lovely little village that we love to visit. And in my head, Blanchland was on the way home. And thinking Google Maps would take us a certain route, I tried to work it out in my head. I plotted a route and I plotted a charge point that would end near our house, that we'd end the day with. And the charge point was actually at the Lidl in Langley Park near our house. What I hadn't worked out was that Google wouldn't take us that direction. And the route from Blanchland to Lidl was just over 25 miles. And we had something like 28 miles left on the tank, on the battery, which started to make you panic a little bit. I think I started to experience range anxiety for the first time. So with the climb out of Blanchland, it's a long climb and steep climb, and the drive around Durham Reservoir, and then the general hilliness that is the border between Northumberland and Durham, it started to look pretty dire.
So we've got 23 miles until home, and the electric car saying 22 miles left. How are we feeling?
We might have to stop.
The range was hovering roughly around the same as the distance that we had left to travel. So then we had the long road down to Shotley Bridge. Great, we went ahead. And then the climb back up to Concert, it started to get close again. I was fairly confident we would make it, but nervous. I'm conscious that Concert is about 150 metres higher in altitude than Durham, so we'd be driving downhill. But this all felt really tight, really scary. At this point, I realised which way Google was taking us. I remembered that there was a Lidl in Concert with a charge point. So, panic over. With a slight change of plan, we stopped a little bit early, with plenty of range left, and plugged into a pod point in Concert.
This charges at 23p per kilowatt hour. We do about 4 and a bit miles per kilowatt hour. Works out about just over 5 pence per mile to charge at a private pod point at Lidl. And look how quickly it's doing it. In 11 minutes of charging, it's delivered almost 8.5 kilowatt hours, which would be over 30 miles of driving. This is fun. I like it. Okay, S has been in the shop for 10 minutes, or for 12 minutes, probably more like 15 minutes. But in this time, I've been able to get the app, add my card, and put in 9 kilowatt hours of electricity. Perfect.
And I guess it really showed me, with Zap Maps help, the sheer number of charge points there are that you can use across County Durham, and I guess the whole country. Although I'm sure you can get caught short with enough planning. I think you can find charge points everywhere. Okay, after our stop in Lidl, we made it home. We gave the car back the next day, and we were feeling smug. So let's go and do the maths then. If we'd have done that 250 miles in our petrol car, it would have emitted about 50 kilograms of CO2. Instead, on that day, we emitted nothing from our car, and the electricity we used in driving around at about 4 miles per kilowatt hour would have emitted about 14 kilograms of CO2. So at least 70% less than a petrol car. As well as that, 250 miles at 50 miles per gallon would have cost us about £26 in fuel. We charged at a posh charge point in the wild that's about as expensive as you can get for about £7, and an average one at Lidl for about £2.50. EVrent actually let you give the car back empty, so that was it. If we'd have charged the tank to full at the posh Osprey charger, it might have cost us about £22, so there's a £4 saving over petrol. If we'd charged it to full at Lidl, it would have cost £14, which is a £12 saving, or at home, assuming the cost of 15 pence per kilowatt hour. And for us, it's actually less than that because we're on our snazzy Octopus Agile tariff I've talked about before. But it would have cost us £9.40 at 15 pence per kilowatt hour, which is a £16.60 saving, or 64% less. So, right, the EV emitted 70% less, and it cost 64% less than a fairly efficient petrol car. That's not bad, if you ask me. It doesn't pay for the cost of the rent, but if we owned the car, that's the savings you'd be getting. We had a lot of fun driving the Northumberland 250 in an EV, in an electric vehicle. And I had a lot of fun proving to myself that driving an EV was easy, it was cheap, it was pretty much no hassle. We're planning to visit my parents in Merseyside when we can go and stay over with them, and I'm actually planning to hire another electric vehicle for that trip too. The trip to the Wirral, where my parents live, is about 310 miles round trip. So I reckon that the EV we hired could do that trip with one charge. We'd save some money on fuel, not enough to make the hire pay for itself again, but we don't need to think about that. And we would emit much less CO2 for that trip. So, what's my conclusion? Well, I recommend EVrent, particularly if you're in Durham or Strood or Castleford or Devon, and hopefully in much more places in the next few years. And I challenge you, next time you do a long trip, why don't you try to do it in an EV? Why don't you ask that question, can I do it in an EV? I would happily give you some pointers if you did. Get in touch. So that's episode 27, and that's the third episode in the car series that we're doing at the moment. In the next episode, we're going to talk to my friend Amy, who's trying to get an electric car. We will look at some options about how to go electric, including leasing, because Amy's mentioned that she was interested in that. But also we'll look at the other options about how we could buy an electric car. Do come back next Saturday to have a look at that video.